So, welcome. Tonight we have, at least for me, it's tonight. For my guest, it probably isn't, but for me, it's tonight. It's about 11 o'clock. I'm having a special guest today. It's someone that I've met some time ago, and we've had a couple of conversations offline, and we just had a longer one for the first time that we could actually talk to each other and not just text each other. And we decided to go live with her story. And my guest of tonight is Charis. And Charis was a fundamentalist street evangelist. I said in my title I had street preacher. You said that wasn't quite correct. So you're a fundamentalist street evangelist turned atheist.
Yes.
So, Charis, introduce yourself.
Hi. As you mentioned, I was a fundamentalist evangelist. The only reason I said that preacher may not be entirely accurate is because I've only preached on a limited number of occasions, so I can't really take the title of preacher. But evangelist I can claim, much to my chagrin.
Okay. And can you tell us which denomination?
Independent Fundamental Baptist.
Okay. And then immediately I have a trigger where I hear in my head Kent Hovind riddle off his sentence, which I still can't replicate. Okay.
What did it have to do with?
Independent fundamentalist, chicken-eating Baptist. I don't know. He does that so fast. I'll have to write it down sometime and learn that, because I think it's kind of cool saying it that way. And I'll make my own adaptation for an atheist.
Was he referring to himself as one, or
yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I was going to say if he was referring to other fundamentalists as such,
no.
in the pejorative, I was going to say he really has no room to speak.
No. He was referring to himself.
Okay.
So tell me, did you grow up a Christian in a Christian home?
In a manner of speaking, it was Christian. It was also abusive. I understand the two of them are not mutually exclusive, though many Christians would insist that they are. I do not blame the majority of Christendom for that. I'm just stating the facts as they are. Yes, I grew up Christian. I was Christian up until I turned about 27, 28. And then I turned atheist.
Okay, and can you tell us what how did it come about that you turned atheist? Did you just decide at one point to check out things, or how did this come about?
It was definitely a journey. Much like most Christians ask each other for each other's conversion story, I have quite the deconversion story. As I've shared with some other Christians, I really compare my deconversion story to a conversion story in that the feeling I got upon deconversion was the freedom that they want to associate with conversion to Christianity. They don't really like it when I point that out. So what really started off was a really ridiculous amount of abuse, psychological, sexual, spiritual, everything that was going on within the family and within the church. And that triggered me leaving that particular situation, though for quite some time after I was still even a fundamentalist. I was a Christian, but I was also going between that and Wicca.
Why did you choose Wicca?
Because it's sparkly. I like the crystal
Because
balls. I like the little things that Wicca is associated with. I also think it's, generally speaking, much more peaceful than Christianity in general.
okay, well, I'm not quite sure, because I had at one time had a run-in with a Wicca woman, and that didn't turn out that well. But I don't think that was because she was a Wicca, but that was more because of her personality, which was pretty much the same personality people like Kent Hovind and Ken Ham have when it comes to Christianity. So I think that might have been our biggest problem.
Just personality conflict.
Yes, but so. But there's a big difference between Christianity and Wicca.
There is, yes. For
Did
one,
you?
one is forbidden by the other.
Yes. So was that maybe a rebellious act more than anything else, or?
It was desperation. Wicca offered kind of a safe harbor without, it offered me a way out of Christianity and fundamentalism without the necessity of abandoning the notion of a God entirely. And I wanted that harbor without yet going into that unfamiliar territory of atheism, which, as most of your listeners probably know, is kind of the Goliath of most Christians in America.
Yes, but did the fact of moving away from God, did that in any way have an influence that you chose something else first?
I chose that something else, and I started feeling guilty, and then I went back to Christianity, and then I was kind of trying to ease the cognitive dissonance between the two by making excuses and calling it more pagan Christianity. So I was waffling between the two, and not too long thereafter, I joined the Thinking Atheist site, and that's when I started conversing with a lot of atheists, and I was a little Christian who came on there, and they normally experience trolls who come on there as Christians who just go there to evangelize the mass of atheists who are on Thinking Atheist.
Mm-hmm. So, but that wasn't what you did. You went there to search for answers.
I didn't yet know exactly what I was searching for, except pretty much to, at that point, I just wanted to, in my mind, allow the atheists to speak for themselves for a change. Because when you're in Christianity, specifically fundamentalism, you're pretty much taught by other Christians what atheists think, how atheists feel, what goes on in their mind, or more often what doesn't. Especially after you read things like Ray Comfort's book, You Can Lead an Atheist to Water, but you can't make him think. So they're very condescending towards atheists. They put words in atheists' mouths all the time. And I was pretty much teaching other Christians the same thing for a very long time. And for once, I figured, since I'm checking into Wicca and other pagan notions, why not go ahead and, in my mind, give the atheists a chance to speak as well? So I did.
And what surprised you most when you did that?
Their demeanor. Really, their demeanor. Honestly, I had fully expected to go in there like a sheep walking to the slaughter. I thought that I would go in there just to get ripped to shreds because atheists are just so mean, so terrible, so godless, such heathens, so loving of evil and despising of good. And I went in there, and lo and behold, no, they're just people. And they were very curious about what I was doing there because I wasn't evangelizing them. So they found me intriguing, and one of them told me, no matter which choice I make, whether it's to remain a theist or to deconvert, that they would love me all the same, and that made all the difference. It kind of freed me to ask questions of them directly instead of just secretly looking through their posted discussions on that site and seeing what the responses were in the past.
Okay, what were the first questions you asked? What were you most curious of?
I'm not sure I had that many questions of them, except where would you point me for me to research things? And they gave me, some of them pointed me towards websites, some of them pointed me towards YouTube video series, some of them pointed me towards books, advice blogs, that sort of thing. I got quite a few DMs from people who were just wanting to help and just making themselves available to ask questions or answer questions if I had them. The questions I had were more, where can I find more information without pestering you guys with every little question that's probably been answered 1,000 times before.
Well, I can only speak for myself. I get asked the same questions over and over again, and at least I realize that it's always a different person asking the questions. So if someone would come up to me with a question that has been asked 1,000 times, I still keep in mind that for this particular person, it's the first time. So to me, it doesn't make a lot of difference. So you were talking to several people, and you were checking out things. What were the first things you were interested in checking out?
Richard Dawkins.
Who is considered maybe the devil incarnate by the fundamentalists, I guess.
And that's why, because at that point I was a little bit, I guess I wasn't necessarily checking out information itself so much as just experimenting with the feeling of letting other people speak for themselves. Because for so long I had been taught by Christians what other people think. And through evangelism, I knew firsthand how frustrating it is to be told what I think. I mean, especially as a fundamentalist wife, when you're told what you think all the time and you really have opinions and thoughts that are completely contrary to what people are telling you that you think and feel, it can become maddening. And I was becoming more and more conscious that this was happening on a much wider scale than I had ever before realized. And I needed to at least pay some respect to the people that I had for so long disrespected.
Yes, that's something that at least I can relate to. When I started doing this, that was a direct result of finding Kent Hovind online and watching his videos. And what stuck out to me is the disrespect, at least he has, in my opinion, towards women, towards animals, and that's something that troubled me, because if Christianity is this religion based on love and based on that God sees everyone as equals, then why are women put down, and why are is there so much disrespect for other living creatures? So that,
well, within fundamentalism, they actually don't teach what many mainstream Christians teach. In fact, the teachings of love that many mainstream Christians cling to, it's outright laughed at within fundamentalism. I'm not speaking for all fundamentalists, because even within fundamentalist Christianity, that smaller circle, there are even splinters within there. I mean, it's just splinters within splinters, but I digress. They consider mainstream Christian teachings like God is love to be a soft gospel, to be felt needs evangelism, basically just feeding you what you want to hear, feeding you soft things. They'll talk about it's just tickling your ears with soft stuff. And the hardliners will say, no, God is not just love. And sometimes his love is beyond what we can understand. You know, the whole God's ways are above our ways and all of that. Many times his love is actually cruelty. If you've ever looked at the abuse wheel, it's a chart, it's a wheel, and it it's about psychological abuse and its different forms. And if you look at it, you can very readily recognize God in that. At least the fundamentalist version of the Christian God in that abuse wheel.
yes, I would agree, and yes, that, and there's a lot more abuse. I've been on several fundamentalist websites, and I've come across some pretty disgusting things. So, but you were a street evangelist. How did you end up becoming a street evangelist?
It was brought about by one particular Bible verse. Basically, the teaching was, if you're doing it right, people are going to hate you, because they will. Jesus says they will hate you for my name's sake. And the teaching is, if the world loves you, you're obeying the world rather than God. And I figured, well, a lot of people like me, so I'm probably not doing enough. I'm probably not obeying God enough, because if I did, well, they'd hate me for Christ. And that led into, the fundamentalist teachings, which, I mean, we were fundies anyway, but this led into the evangelism part of it. And through that, we found great comfort. Kirk Cameron, Ken Hovind, Ken Ham, and all of the rest of them. Jason Lyle, he was a favorite of mine. He works at the Creation Museum. I believe he's an astrophysicist. And they taught how to evangelize. And I had also worked with Amway a bit, and so I was already familiar with some of the psychological manipulation, and I just saw it repeated within Living Waters Ministries. I saw those principles of psychological manipulation repeated. How to get a person to not interrupt you while you're evangelizing, how to shift burden of guilt, which is pretty much what an entire book by Greg Koukl is based on. So that's what led us into it. And from there, they taught us how to most effectively get responses from people while they're handing out literature, how to start up conversations in the most creepy way imaginable. They'd brag about how they'd chase women with tracts being Christian literature.
Can you give an example of a creepy way to start a conversation?
If there's a part, well, in some cases they'd warn against doing that, because you don't necessarily want to freak out your prospective evangelee. But sometimes there would be women out and about around the beach, and I would be directed to go for all intents and purposes, stalk them and, preach the gospel, because it may be the last chance I have before they die. And if I did not obey this divine directive to preach the gospel unto all nations, then I might have blood eternally on my hands. So you'd see me or some other guy chasing after this girl, waving a pamphlet at her. Ma'am, ma'am.
So they actually put the blame on you for what would happen to other people that you encountered in the street?
What do you mean?
When it comes to their eternal life, they would blame you for not being able to
not
save them.
entirely. I mean, not necessarily for not being able to save them. I mean, they would put the blame on the non-Christian for their sins. What Living Waters Ministry says is, it's not that they're being sent to hell for not believing. They're being sent to hell for their sins, which believing would then free them from. They kind of turn it around a little bit, but the end result is the same. But what they would blame us for is for not trying to evangelize at every given point. Mark Cahill was a very notable evangelist who would do the same thing. How he and some others, their usual message was, you have so many tickets to heaven in your pocket, and if you die with those tickets to heaven still in your pocket, how much blood is on your hands? How many people may have been saved but weren't because you didn't try, you did not go preaching to them, you didn't try to share the gospel with them. So there was a ton of guilt, and there was a ton of, like, you would go driving and you'd come to the outskirts of a city and know by your own theology that almost everybody there was headed to hell, and that you had all these tickets to heaven in your pocket, figuratively speaking, and you could be working to save them, or you could be not doing that.
Yes. So, but that's actually using the guilt part to force you to do those things, and that's, at least for me, that would be a big trigger to at least not do it. But
well, the way that I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I get it that from your side, being in the religion, and I still call it brainwashed to believe this. It would be a lot different, and it to some of them, at least, it would make sense that they would feel guilty if they couldn't save people. So, but how did it feel to you when they told you that?
Well, the guilt is magnified by how they explained it. Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort are very graphic about the teachings of hell, and if they truly believe it, I can't really blame them for it. Because if you truly believe in the doctrine of hell, you really believe that people will be cast eternally into burning alive forever. And it's been explained as how difficult it is to sleep with a burn on just your index finger. Now imagine that over your entire body. And I've been burned. Most of us have. We know how it feels. And to have to imagine this on our entire body, and then imagine this never ceasing forever and ever, and knowing that if you don't try to evangelize the person walking past you on the sidewalk, the barista serving you coffee, the waitress serving you food, like we go out to restaurants, and whatever person from whatever evangelism group would be with us, he would start trying to evangelize the waitress as she's trying to take our order, trying to serve us our stinking food so she can move on to other tables. And he hijacks her and starts evangelizing her. But he is sincerely under the impression that if he doesn't, her eternal damnation could be on his hands. Now, once she does receive that evangelism, then the blame or not is on her. But if she's never told, then the verse is like, how will they be saved unless they know, and how will they know without a preacher? And basically, if you don't tell them, then their blood is on you. Once you do tell them, then their blood's on their own head.
And that's how it felt for you as well?
Yeah.
Because you said it's what Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron teach, but that's what you actually felt at the time.
Yes. Yes.
And so I talked to a couple of people who came out from Christianity and turned atheist, and a lot of them are still struggling with the part of hell, because that's been part of their life for so long, and it has been, and I get it, that it has been very real to them. That it's a very real threat, and that hell is real. How did that work out for you? Was it the same for you? Was it one of the hardest parts?
Well, yeah, it was that and more, because not only is there the concern about everybody around you, there's also the concern of your own children. And when you have kids, and you know that at first they may be considered innocent, though in certain theologies maybe not, but in ours they were considered without actual blame until they reached a rather subjective age of accountability. But once they reached that, they were fully culpable for whatever in their conduct or thoughts was considered a sin. They're culpable, punishable, damnable, fully able to be sent to hell. And you as a parent, they are your mission field, especially as a mother. In that type of group, as a mother, your children are your mission field. And so much weight is put on, especially a mother, to make sure that her children are brought up to follow Christ, because if they're not, you are, as a mother, are putting their souls at risk. And the teachings on hell in there are so graphic. And it's one of the most basic things that a child is able to understand first. Every child understands fire. They all understand hot. Most of them have been burnt by something like a stove or a coffee cup. So they understand what hot is. And so the fear of hell for a child is so carnal. It's so just primal. It's a primal fear that's driven into a person from the very beginning. We're all afraid of fire. We're all afraid of being burnt. And it's just that instinct against fire. Just that fear. It's very, very real in the way they portray it. Different videos, different songs. There are different singers, Christian rappers, who do songs specifically to put fright into people about hell. So I can't blame people for fearing it. It's brainwashing. It's a very pervasive form, kind of terrorism, though I wouldn't call it that, because, I mean, it's not terrorism in the form that we normally think of it. But it is terror. And it's considered good if you have this terror.
I would consider it at least child abuse, and a severe form of child abuse. So, but when you left, did you still have that fear in you for yourself?
I still do on occasion.
You still do. So Well, it's not uncommon. It's I think it's one of the most common things that I hear from people who left Christianity, and it's one of the toughest things to deal with. When it comes up, how do you deal with it?
I haven't gotten one specific method down just yet, but there's a quote that I usually go back to, the one which says basically that I had been dead for millions of years prior to my birth, and I didn't suffer anything for it.
Yes, and that's what basically will happen when you die. So there's nothing to fear. You just stop being.
Intellectually, I know this. Philosophically, I know this, as do probably most atheists that you would talk to now. In fact, many Christians, even many theists, don't actually believe in a literal physical hell. Some of them are nihilists, and they just believe that, likewise, that we stop existing. But within fundamentalism, at least Christian fundamentalism, a literal physical hell is the most prevalent teaching. And it reaches our most primal instincts to run away from fire.
Well, it's one of the best tools to control people and to keep people in line. I think there's no better way than torture, and if you have eternal torture, that's the ultimate way to control people.
Unfortunately, it is incredibly effective. I mean, as you've said, many atheists that you've spoken to yourself still struggle with it, myself included.
Yes, and it's across the board. When it doesn't matter if they're younger people, but older people I've talked to who still struggle with it at times. The one you named, I actually I had a couple of videos set up to watch, and one of your favorites is on. I don't have the sound on. Seth Andrews. He said repeatedly that was the most tough part that he had to get rid of, and that's still something that comes up. So what was it? So at a point you came to the fact that you no longer believed in a God. Was there something specific that made you realize that, or was that just over time that you lost belief in a God?
It was a very, very quick domino effect. I lost belief in the Christian God, and since I had already not believed in any of the other gods, for reasons that I should have applied to the Christian God long before, but since I had not believed in them anyway, that kind of left me without a God. Because I only believed in one to begin with.
Yes. But you said it was a domino effect.
Well, I mean, I had already during my Christian walk, I had sometimes asked myself, how do I know that other gods aren't the true gods? And through various means, I would have myself convinced that they weren't. But as I was speaking with more atheists elsewhere, I eventually became convinced that the Christian God, as described in the Bible, also did not exist. And, A led to B, led to C in very quick succession. If the Christian God doesn't exist, I'm left with no God to believe in.
Oh, yeah. So there wasn't something you discovered that made you realize that you just used the tools you had for the other gods, and at one point applied those to the Christian God?
I guess it was, I'd still call it a domino effect. I'm not sure if I can draw a line in the sand from belief in a God of any sort to disbelief in any sort of God. It was more just a gradual thing, and eventually I just realized that at some point in all of this, I had stopped believing in a God. There was a day that it happened, but there wasn't really a moment that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like there wasn't one single thing that did it. It was more a basket.
Mm-hmm. But at that point, you still were a member of the church. Am I correct?
I was a believer in the God of the Bible. At that particular point, I was not anymore a member of a church.
Okay.
I was a theist without a church. I would occasionally go to a local Baptist church, but it was becoming more and more rare for me to do so.
And how did the church react when you stopped coming? Did people try to get you back in the fold, as it were?
Not that church. The former church, yes. But this church, I had already
Yes.
moved to a different area. And while some of them had known me from childhood, I hadn't spent, the last 7 years going to their church. So my occasional visits were kind of incidental rather than expected to continue.
Okay, and people in your surroundings, family, friends, how did they take it?
It's kind of weird. I mean, I do live in the Bible Belt, so certain family members did not take it too well. Other family members didn't care because they also were fairly agnostic themselves. Other people, I'm kind of a private person, so I'm not really widely known. So I didn't get a whole lot of pushback from others, except from some people in business who were very strongly theistic, and they, start getting into their debate mindset, and they'd start trying to kind of, I don't know if they're trying to give themselves beautiful feet, as the scripture says. Those who share the gospel have beautiful feet. They shine like stars in the universe. I don't know if they were trying to get some of that for themselves and use me as their means of achieving that, or if they actually cared, or I don't know why, but for whatever reason, they like to spar with me sometimes just to do it seems.
Okay,
Perhaps a mental exercise.
Yeah, but you didn't get what I've heard from some people, the massive backlash that they were ostracized because now they were an atheist and pretty much considered the enemy.
From the other church that I had gone to, yes, I definitely got that. I was given letters that were saying if I didn't return to my abusive husband whom I had left, then I would be disciplined. They had the pastor, associate pastor, different members of the congregation sign that letter. And so opening that letter it's terrifying. I mean, it helped that I wasn't in their geographical area at that time, but I was still kind of in hiding because I had just left.
Mm-hmm. So you left your husband and then immediately moved away?
Yes, I ran because of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we chose not to go into that part, so I'll skip that. Should people ask me why did I skip that, it's because we chose to, at least for now, skip that part.
it would probably trigger certain listeners in your audience. Plus, there are some very identifying things that happen.
Yes, and just to be clear, it was me who made the decision not to include it in the talk. Should that even matter? So yeah, you run, so you didn't get the backlash you normally would have had, I think.
Not right in my face. If I had been in that area still, the backlash would have been more in my face, more visible, more audible. Since I was in another state by that time, while I still got the backlash, and still very emotional because everybody I knew was in that church. And I'd moved back to my home state, but I hadn't been there in like 10 years. So it was still extremely difficult, and I was left again to start to rebuild, but circumstance difficult.
Sorry, you cut out a couple of times.
I'm sorry. Which part do you need repeated?
The last sentence, I think.
I was left in another state in which I needed to start to rebuild myself, discover my own identity, because when you're a fundamentalist, your entire identity is wrapped up in it. You're supposed to leave the old man behind and put on the new man of Christ, or woman, whatever the case may be. But basically, leave your old identity, put on your new identity. But then my identity was then stripped away. So now what? Now I'm in a state without any social network, without professional contacts, without anything, and receiving hostile messages from those that I used to love. And I didn't even have my own identity anymore.
And while building up a new social network, did you look for like-minded people in the area where you're now?
Yeah, sometimes. Other times I just, since I'm in the Bible Belt, a good probably 80 to 90% of everybody here is specifically Christian. So it really wouldn't suit any purpose to ignore the 90% of the population and only pinpoint about 5 to 10% that I really relate with. So I started trying to get over the trauma to, at least to an extent, that I could communicate with a Christian again, because it's kind of necessary when you're in the Bible Belt. You can't really avoid them.
No. There's no point that you can avoid them completely. But I mean, with your current situation, when it comes to friends, did you choose to find more atheists as friends, or are you just going with the flow and looking for people you meet and you might make friends with?
Pretty much the second option. I try to kind of sift through people at least enough where I'm not adopting abusers as friends, which had been too common for me in the past. And it so happens that many of the peaceful people do often happen to be free thinkers, but that's kind of incidental, I think. I mean, there are a lot of really sweet people that are atheists or that are theists, and I try to befriend them as well.
Yes, well, we've talked about this in the private conversation we had before, and I've talked about this with the guy I spoke to yesterday, Steve. In that I don't judge people by what they believe. I judge people on their actions, and that pretty much leaves me with, I think, real friends. And so I don't care if people are believers. I have Christian friends, I have Muslim friends. So for me, there's no line.
I'm dating a
But
Christian, so there's that.
yes, you told me, and that's still something that intrigues me, because for you at least, it's again open door to at least being close to someone who's a Christian. On the other hand, for him, living in the Bible Belt, dating an atheist, is I think maybe a little controversial.
It
So
can be.
how is that working?
Well, since he's a martial arts instructor, people don't tend to confront him with things, so that works out.
Yeah, I can see that, but you're living with him, I guess,
Yes,
aren't you?
Yes,
So
I had warned him that he might encounter some controversy because of this and because of the beliefs among surrounding Christians, and he said he's not worried about it. And I have learned that I cannot make people's decisions for them, even if for me it's in their best interest. So I thought, he is an adult, quite a bit older than me. He has the maturity to make his own decisions. And if he wants to still be with me despite the risk of controversy, despite the potential harm to his professional contact list, that is his decision to make.
mm-hmm. But do you guys talk about religion? And because you were a street evangelist, are you now evangelizing for atheism, for instance?
I'm not. I only bring it up if it comes up, and I try not to get combative about it. I'm usually more in a defensive position since I'm usually the recipient of evangelism.
So he evangelizes to you?
No, I'm sorry if I conveyed that. I meant in the area. I'm not an atheist evangelism. I'm more the city
No,
atheist for.
but I meant in your relationship. Does
No.
that
Neither
come
of
up?
us. It comes up on occasion, but neither of us tries to convert the other.
Okay. Well, maybe that's me, because my best friend is a Christian, and I have to say, every now and again I'll try and talk to him, and I'll try and convert him, because I still think it's limiting people, and that goes for any form. He's not a fundamentalist, but so that could just be me.
Well, he's not a fundamentalist. The man I'm with is not a fundamentalist, and I'm grateful for this. Honestly, I don't think that I could ever be with one. It would be too, well, for lack of a better word, it would be too triggering.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a
Yes.
fundy. He is a Christian.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It's me asking you. You are the prime subject in this talk. So and I've been called off a couple of times that I interrupt people too much. So but now you're an atheist. How does that change your life?
I think mostly, well, first of all, I don't have to get up early on Sunday mornings to spend hours dressing myself, children, getting multiple people breakfast in time to leave ahead of time for church, to teach Sunday school, to volunteer for nursery, and to spend basically all of my Sunday morning and early afternoon with church-related activities, try to get some rest during the Sunday afternoon period in between morning and evening services, and then wash, rinse, and repeat for evenings, and then repeat for Sunday night. There isn't that stuff. And then Bible study Tuesdays and evangelism. So there isn't that.
Yeah.
Ironically, without all of that, I am more free to, as they would believe, observe God's creation, because I'm not in church being just shut off from it. So, maybe they should have some gratitude that I have much more spare time on my hands. That's another subject, though.
Yes, well, and you have children?
I have 2.
You have 2. So at least you'll have more time to spend with them on
Correct.
Sunday, which I think is a lot more important than dragging them off to church, which I think as a kid should be one of the most horrible things that can happen to you, if you have to sit still and listen for
they've been
long.
put through much worse.
Yes, okay, but I'm just generalizing in
when you're the child of an evangelist, sometimes one or the other parent might use you as a human shield against cantankerous people that you're evangelizing against. There may or may not have been incidents when somebody might have, not me, when I would be standing up for my kids who were being used as basically a human shield. There are things that happen in evangelism that should never, ever happen.
Mm-hmm.
I still see people around using their children as a way to get their foot in the door, because kids are cute and nobody's going to say no to cute. And if you don't
I don't know what happened, but I'm getting all kinds of strange sounds interfering now.
I'm sorry. I guess I'm saying that there are much worse things that a child of an evangelist can endure than sitting through a Sunday church service.
Yes. But is that common, that people use their children as a child?
As a shield? It wasn't isolated. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. Yeah, because I think all of us have seen or Westboro Baptist, and they like to use the children for their needs, which I still think is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen.
It's one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. And
You have
I did that in the past, shortly after giving birth to my first one. They requested my presence and that of my oldest daughter at the abortion clinic. I agreed. I did not feel good about it afterwards. And just things like that piling up on top of each other, that can start, that cognitive dissonance I was talking about. And
mm-hmm.
That can start to eat at a person and bring them to a place where they feel that they're doing harm by their very existence. And yet the teachings of fundamentalism say that if you're not doing this, you're disobeying God. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Either you do this for, you think, the well-being of your child and the well-being of other children, or you neglect to do this and you're useless to everybody and harmful to everybody. If you do it, you're a harm to your children because you know there's something wrong. You may not be able at the time to put your finger on it, but you know there's something wrong.
Yes, at least that's what I would that's what I would think. So your church was anywhere close to what Westboro Baptist does?
In theology, yes. In theology, they were very similar. In practice, their preferred approach was more muted because they thought that Westboro's approach was counterproductive. But the actual theology was actually pretty close.
But if they had you posted at an abortion clinic, it's not that different, I think.
There are certain ways that it differs, but that's not one of the ways that it differs. That's correct. And it wasn't that particular church, it was another church. I've been to more than one church, so it's just fundamentalism in general is what I'm speaking of, in different evangelism groups.
Okay, and your children now, how do you raise them? Do you raise them as atheists, as free thinkers, or?
They can choose. They can ask me if they wish to go to church. I will not prevent them. They know that I am an atheist. They are with their father a lot, so they kind of identify as Christian, even though I hear from their statements they don't exactly buy into it. And I tell them, just while you're there, say what you need to say to keep yourself safe.
Yes. Well,
and when they're with me, I tell them I will take you to a church if you want me to, and they don't ask. I think that's pretty telling.
Yes, I think so too. But I also think that if they have questions and they'll get honest answers from you, I think that's at least one of the best things you can offer them, because that's when they learn how to think and not what to think, and that's the big difference between growing up in a religion and being an atheist. So but you said they spend a lot of time with their father. Is that split equally, or?
There's a lot of stuff that happened that's because I did not have the courage to report certain things that had happened soon enough for there to be evidence. And so, of course, in the eyes of the court, it didn't happen. And so that's basically why I don't have them full-time.
You don't have them full-time?
No, not full-time.
Okay, so your ex-husband has them full-time, and you get visiting rights? Is that how it works?
Yep.
Okay. If I'm going too personal, you just cut me off, right? Because that's
fairly identifying.
Okay. But are they in a different state when?
Yes.
Because you moved away? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. Well, let's skip this because I'm not comfortable at the moment.
I'm sorry if I've made you uncomfortable.
Talk. No. It's not you making me uncomfortable. I think we should leave this part because it has nothing to do at least not directly with you turning atheist. So now you're no longer a believer. Do you still? You said you've in earlier talks you said that you've followed Kent Hovind and Ken Ham and Ray Comfort. Do you still look in on them, or because
I hadn't, because it would cause flashbacks when I would try. But I'm starting to get into the enough. I've gotten enough strength, and I can start kind of looking in on what they're doing lately a little bit more.
So, and what are your interests now? What new interest did you get? Now you're no longer a Christian.
It's not necessarily new interests. It's interests that I'm actually permitted to explore when I hadn't been before. I had been really interested in science. I had been, all my science education was pretty much no. When you're a fundamentalist, your science education is young Earth creationism, whether it's the 10,000-year version or the 6.
But when you grow up, so you went to Christian schools where they actually taught this?
No, it was public school, but since I'm in the Bible Belt, it might as well have been Christian school at the time.
Yes, I've heard enough from people that even in public schools, that they tend to slip in the religious point of view anyway, even if it's not allowed, they'll still do it. So was that the case with you as well?
Sometimes it wasn't really obvious really often, but the pressure was on from pretty much everybody who attended. So even if the teachers didn't do it directly, pretty much all the students and teachers were Christians, so it didn't need to be done. Basically, kids would just hand out flyers for the next church event, and you'd go where you were.
Okay, and the churches, are they countering what you were taught in a public school? Do they have an active program to teach you young Earth creationism?
In public school?
No, the churches, I meant.
Oh, usually yes.
Because
if you're in a fundamentalist church, then often they will use Answers in Genesis as that, or Ace or Becca, as a counter to the goddess evolution fairy tale for grown-ups that they teach you in public schools.
And how do they do that? Because I don't think that's in a regular church service, I guess.
Nope, it isn't.
Do they have separate
They have separate
events?
Bible studies, yes. Separate Bible studies, different curricula that parents can complement their children's normal education with. They have lots of homeschooling supplies, and lots of people, they encourage homeschooling a lot. So there are tons of homeschoolers, whether they were that originally or whether they were cajoled into pulling their kids out of public schools, which often happens. Answers in Genesis has a pretty extensive bookstore for parents to oversee their children's normal educations and supplement it with young Earth creationism and give them materials for countering their teachers even within class.
But that didn't happen to you, if I'm correct. Didn't you tell me that your parents weren't that fundamentalists?
They were fundamentalists, but they weren't that structured.
Okay.
They were still
But
looked
they
down
did.
on by other Christians because many Christians, because of their behavior, would not have considered them Christians as well, but they still had very fundamentalist mindsets.
Okay, but they did send you off to things that the church did to educate you in young Earth creationism.
In our kids' Sunday schools, it was just assumed that God had created the heavens and earth. And in science classes in the local public school, while they didn't teach young earth creationism, they would also conveniently, oh gee, run out of time at the end of the school year to include evolution in the curriculum. They'd kind of skip over it, do a very cursory summary over like an hour period or something, and then move on to other things.
Yes, that's what I've heard from a couple of people living in the Bible Belt. That it's, yeah, it sounds like dodging to teach it, and then trying to construct it in a way that you don't have enough time to teach it properly.
Yeah.
So, but so nothing in your life as such has changed a lot. The only thing is that you're trying to brush up on science. There's nothing. You're not active as a vocal atheist.
Not locally. I do have a Twitter account, and I do engage there and in a few other places, and on occasion with people that I meet face to face if they bring it up. But I try to present an image that counters what they're used to being taught about atheists. Basically, I try to be myself, and I'm not exactly the shrill, strident atheist that they're used to reading about, that they're used to teaching their Sunday school students about. I mean, they try to put behaviors on us and forget that we're not just atheists, we are people. Atheist isn't the only thing that describes me. I love coffee, I love koalas, I love manatees, I love blue and green. You know, so I try to, I guess, humanize us.
Yes, and I get it. That's something that you need to do. Although that, for me, that sounds completely alien, because where I live, pretty much everybody is an atheist, and some might still tick the box in a sense that they have some sort of religion, although they haven't practiced it for years. So that's also a reason why I started doing talks like this, to at least uh, um, get a clue about how things are on the other side of the world, because they're so completely different, and sometimes I just can't relate with people. But so you're on Twitter as an atheist.
Yes.
How do you experience talks with theists and with Christians in particular?
What I see them as doing is what I've seen other Christians doing, and basically using Twitter as their anonymous platform for getting their evangelism in, basically checking off their to-do list. Some of them are naturally combative, just like any one of us might have in our core personality. Some of them are complete creeps, and some of them are just really sweet, just like the population at large. I think a lot of people see Twitter as a field, kind of to borrow from the analogies used in the Bible. The godless are seen as crops to be harvested, souls to be harvested. You go out, sow the seed of the gospel, wait a while, and harvest the crops, harvest the souls, which is really creepy. now that I think back on it, but that's what they're teaching. Sowing
But how
seeds,
do
reaping souls.
and do you disclose that you were a fundamentalist Christian in your chats on Twitter?
Sometimes.
And how do they react?
I don't know. Some of them will seem surprised. Some of them will just ignore it and go with their, just kind of go with what the plan was, which was to ask me their Stump the Atheist questions so that they can get their tape on their belt for the day. Pretty much what I find on Twitter, much to my dismay, is that by and large, atheists to them on Twitter are targets, where they're evangelism targets. Usually, not always, but often, if they're talking to us, if they're speaking to us, knowing that we're an atheist, we're on their short list for evangelism.
Yeah, but they don't respond in any way if you tell them that you were a former Christian. They just
they respond, but it's usually pretty condescending, and they don't understand that a person can deconvert and it not be just a phase, or that it wasn't just for purely emotional reasons, that you actually did research to come to that conclusion. Even if emotional reasons were the reasons you left a specific church, it wasn't the reason I left Christianity.
And then you don't get you're just mad at God.
I do, but I tell them I don't even believe in God. How can I actually be mad at him? I'm not mad at God. Why would I be mad at somebody I don't believe in? You're just so angry. Well, when you have XYZ happen to you, you come to me and not be angry about it.
Yes, I think that the things that happen to you in life are the things that you can be angry with, not with some supernatural being that either failed to protect you or failed to things from happening. It doesn't come to mind in any way. So
many of them can't comprehend it. Because there is the teaching within fundamentalism that there's really no such thing as an atheist. Many of them genuinely believe that an atheist is not actually possible, that everybody has it written onto their heart, the reality of God, and they can deny it with their mouth, but they can't truly deny it in their heart because creation declares the glory of God. That is what they believe. And, the whole you can lead an atheist to water, but you can't make him think. You can lead them to evidence that, lead us to evidence that we ought to believe by their estimation, but you can't make us actually accept it, even though they'll maintain that we accept it anyway. We just hate it.
Which is one of the strangest thing. I did 5.5 hours on Christian radio, live on Christian radio with a presuppositionalist. I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Bruggencate.
No, but I'm familiar with presuppositionalism.
Okay, yeah, well, he pretty much was a clone of Tim Bruggencate, and so he tried to convince me that I believed in God, but I was just in denial. And we managed to stretch that out over 5.5 hours, which included, I think, 3/4 of an hour of me explaining why I don't have to test my couch every day to sit on it and know that it'll hold me up, which is probably one of the most bizarre talks I've ever had. And I've saved them, and I still haven't put them on YouTube. If people want to listen to them, they can They can send me a tweet, because I can link to the Christian radio site who still has them on and who's actually still playing them. Last I checked,
Many of them don't know what faith is and what it isn't.
Well, my experience has been that most of them think that faith is actually knowing.
Yeah, and that's
and
exactly not the definition of faith.
Yes, that's the opposite. But they know God exists. But well, if you know God exists, then faith is useless, because if you have knowledge, you don't have any use for faith. You can't have faith. Yeah. And did you ever have that? Did you ever have that?
Yeah.
So, and how did you define knowledge at that point?
The same way we do. I actually did have some debates with other fundamentalists, because on occasion I was the rebel, and I would debate things with them saying, no, this is a stupid argument. If you're going to debate atheists, at least keep the argument sane or reasonable. You know, don't use this argument, don't use that argument. They'd get so mad at me, and they'd start saying, you need to check your relationship with God and stuff like that. I don't know, sometimes.
And that's another thing that intrigues me, a relationship with God. So, but at one point you had a relationship with God. How does that manifest?
Basically, like, there is a lot of brain power that goes into that, and a lot of stress that goes into that, and a lot of hope and fear and despair, and then guilt for that despair that can go into that. It's almost like you have to will it to be. And if somebody brings up an objection to it being real, or if somebody says, I don't know what's going on, my prayer by this many people, and it certainly can't be out of the will of God for me to have this gallbladder infection cured or something. I mean, what can it be benefiting God's purpose for me to be lying here sick or something like that? And you have to be able to come up with some explanation that justifies it, and justifies to them that a relationship with God like this is actually a good thing.
Yes, but what is the actual relationship? That's something I've never figured out.
Being convinced that this person is actually with you, that you can't see. It's almost like what we're doing right now. You are on the other side of this conversation. God is also on the other side of anything that happens. I can't see you right now, though I can hear you. We may not be able to see God, though we can see the effects of him, as they would say, or you can hear his voice in your heart, as they would say. So it's kind of like a one-way mirror. He can see you, but you can't see him. I'll be watching you.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's how I view it. The big brother watching you. But did you hear an actual voice at times?
If I was so stressed that I was hallucinating one, sure.
So that's for me, that's the incredible part. Although there are ways to explain it.
A lot of them don't actually understand how the human brain can react under certain circumstances. Even a normal, healthy human brain can react in remarkable ways under certain situations, in certain situations. And many of them don't know this. They don't know the extents to which scientists have studied our minds, and they don't want to know. I mean, just learning about near-death experiences makes them mad. Well, some of them, some others, it causes doubt, and that causes guilt, and it's just a whole new can of worms there. They don't like that sort of study, because our minds are supposed to be separate from our souls, but our souls are supposed to be kind of a product of what we know, which is in our minds. So they keep trying to separate the two. But when the eternal destiny of your soul rests on what your mind accepts or doesn't accept, you can't really accept the two. So then when you hear about science coming up with all these discoveries, or making all these discoveries, doing all these studies, all this imaging, and just learning how it works apart from any notion of a soul, it can be very upsetting, and they have to deny it or cover it up.
Yeah, well, I had a conversation with a young guy a while back, who was a Christian and then was an atheist, and then had an experience while on drugs, which he defined as the Holy Spirit entering him. And then that wasn't enough because he was on drugs at the time. But then later had the same experience in a parking lot, walking with a friend, and they were talking about God, and they were talking about the Holy Spirit, and he had pretty much the same experience. And what I discussed with him at that point is that we have investigated the mind,
the chemicals that are released,
and yes, and we also have investigated what happens if the Holy Spirit enters someone, and how that manifests in the brain. And that's pretty much the same thing that you can get at a pop concert, or when there's a song that brings some emotions. Could be a song that you relate to someone who has passed away, what a song maybe that has played on a funeral, or the complete opposite, a song that played at the moment where you were extremely happy. So the song can bring back that memory and can bring back that feeling. But it's not only songs, it's also other experiences that can do that. So talking about something and really getting caught up in that conversation can also bring that back and bring that feeling back. So you can what you experience in a church as the Holy Spirit can come to you in a completely different situation, as long as the right parts in your brain are triggered or touched, or whatever you want to call it. So
yeah.
But I've never been able to convince him that that's actually what is happening. He agreed with me that some of the things are similar, but he kept telling me that when it's actually the Holy Spirit, it's different. And I don't think it really is, but I can't relate to that because it never happened to me. So what would you say? Is that something that is similar with that?
I don't know, because I had a problem with it happening to me too. And many people would, I would be in pastoral counseling and asking, am I not doing things right? Why am I not feeling what other people are feeling? And I think part of that is why there's kind of a discrepancy between Baptists and, say, Church of God, or Pentecostals, or Church of Christ, Assembly of God. They're much more charismatic over there, much more, you would say, emotionally driven. Whereas Baptists have a reputation for being a bit more cold. not having as much emotion, more theology and study, more misapplied logic, but logic nonetheless. So we didn't have as many overt, you might say, spiritual experiences or emotional experiences. So it wasn't as common then, but some people would have them. And when that did happen, they would call it a spiritual experience and say that God's trying to reach you. And if that person isn't a Christian, they'd say you need to respond to Christ's call. Respond to the call of Christ, because he'll only call you so much. And after a certain point, he will give up on you. And that's basically the point of no return, when you're pretty much going to be damned to hell. So you either respond to those emotional experiences by coming forward to the altar, or you risk God abandoning his efforts to woo you to himself.
But that's another way to instill fear. And you said you had never had that happen to you.
I have had it happen. It's just not very common. Most of my emotions varied from fear to despair to horror. So there wasn't a whole lot of euphoria in my life for me to really refer to.
No, but not when you say that, that's not the religion part, I guess.
Some of it is, because much of the abuse that happened was related to the religion.
Okay, can we get into some of the abuse that was related to religion?
Sure. Let's see. I'm trying to think of kind of a general aspect of it. I guess the theology of complementarianism. You've probably heard of that by now.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't catch that.
Complementarianism. The belief that women are to be subject to their husbands or to another male figure until the time that they get married.
That's something that I've read in the Bible, and that was to me one of the most disgusting parts. So yes, that I didn't have the name you used just now, and I'll have to ask you to put that in writing for me so I can look more into it.
It's complementarianism. Basically, women are complements to their husband.
Yes.
They complement his needs with his goals, objectives, needs being at the forefront. They'll give lip service to her being put up on a pedestal, being honored and loved and cherished. Yeah, they'll say that. They'll definitely say that, especially when any sort of a public eye is on them.
And how did that manifest in your church? Were you taught that at an early age already, or do they wait?
Yeah. No, I was taught just very broad teachings on it from an early age, but it became much more specific later.
Okay, and what was the reason for it to become more specific?
Marriage.
Marriage.
I got married, so it had to become more specific.
Okay, but at that point, did the church put more emphasis on it, or was it your husband putting the emphasis on it?
My husband through the church. He wasn't very vocal all the time, but he did know how to wield his support system against me, and how to basically refer me to the pastor, and maybe not tell me things directly all the time, but definitely nod and thank the pastor when the pastor would come down hard on me. So it was hard for me to really get mad at him when it was the pastor speaking, but he was speaking through the pastor.
Yes. And were there specific things that would that were the reason for him to call in the pastor, or was it?
Well, let's just say, like, one example would be, we had a super cramped house, and he wanted to bring a big sofa in. This is just one incidental thing. He wanted to bring a big sofa into the super already really cramped house. I was objecting to it because of space concerns. I didn't want to have to be crawling over the sofa to get across the room. But the pastor told him, you know, he normally lets his wife, generally speaking, have domain over the home situation. But my husband at the time really wanted this couch, and I was objecting to it and still objecting to it. And the pastor turned to me and said, "Okay, how about this? You submit to your husband." And my jaw dropped. My husband gave a nod, and that was that.
Wow.
More happened within the meeting, but I mean, that was the conclusion. I mean, my husband could give me domain of the house if he chose to do so, but ultimately the choice was his, and it was on me to obey. Obey your husband.
And that's, yeah, that to me is opening the door to a lot of more abuse, because if that's the standard of a pastor, I that's something I can never wrap my head around. That's
just on a little thing. I think I told you about some of the big things.
Yes, you told me about the bigger things, and again, I chose to avoid that, at least for now. Maybe in a later talk we can get into those things, but for now, I think at least it's better not to.
I think that would probably be prudent for the moment.
Yes.
I mean, your listeners, don't want to send them off to therapy the first time they listen to me.
No, that's well, it could give some of them a hard time, I guess, because it gave me a hard time at points. So yeah, well, we better skip that part. But there is this other thing. You have a daughter, who still two. You have two daughters. Okay, that I didn't know. Who are still in, as I see it, dragged to a church like that. Do you think you can at least counter what they are taught there?
Yeah, to an extent. Basically, using logic to teach them how to identify harmful things, showing them that the people in suits and ties aren't necessarily all the good guys.
No.
Showing them really beautiful people who have committed atrocities. It's not always, criminals aren't always big, bad, ugly, growling with red eyes like you see in the cartoons. That sort of thing. Just showing them reality, what reality is, what a fairy tale looks like. What does a fairy tale look like? What does a villain look like? What do we normally see in heroes and villains, what qualities do we see in them? Well, villains usually require their followers to be loyal to the point of death, possibly worship them. Villains often want to take over a large section of the population, if not the entire thing. Often movie villains are wanting to destroy the world. And I'll just point that out. And when they come to the points of the Bible where that's happening, well,
they have a tool to recognize it.
yeah. And it's ironic that often makers of these kids movies where they have villains acting like this, ironically, the villains are acting very much like God.
Yes, there I have to agree.
It's just very strange. So I guess I'm kind of using that to their advantage.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask how old they are?
They're not yet teenagers.
Okay.
They're still young. So I have to approach them delicately, and they know that I was hurt. They know that it has affected me greatly, but due to the nature of what had happened and to their ages, I have not told them what happened.
No, and I think that's maybe for the best. Because
I'm waiting till they're quite a bit older.
Yes, because it will be.
It's traumatizing for adults.
Mm-hmm.
It's traumatizing for adults.
Yes. Well, what I can say is that I grew up in an abusive home, and at the age of when I was, let's see, when I was 20, we didn't discuss it. I think we both felt it coming, but at the same point, I started moving out my stuff out of the house to a neighbor, and then when I entered the house, my mother said, "We're going away. We're leaving." So somehow we felt that both coming. So I can relate to how it is growing up in an abusive home as a child, and when I at that point heard things later that I didn't know, it still was a lot to take in. So yeah, I can see why you don't share that now, because that I don't think that would be a good thing.
They don't even know what certain terms mean yet because of their ages.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be too much of a sit-down talk.
Yeah.
It would just be way too much. I'm not going to do that to them.
No, and I would agree. But at least you have some form of influence still, and at least for what I know, for the short period that we've talked together before this talk, I think they have someone who can not only guide them well enough, but in the end will be able to explain everything well enough. So that in the end will be a big problem. And if
they're already beginning to, even at their young ages, they're already beginning to see certain inequalities that should not be there.
Yes.
So they're starting to see things.
Mm-hmm.
on their own.
Yes, and children do, and they do at a very young age. And if there's one person that can answer questions regarding that, that'll help.
One thing that's in my favor is that I don't have to lie to maintain my side of the story, and he would.
Yes. And yeah, I still, I honesty is for me at least something that's one of my main things. First of all, I'm too stupid to lie, because if I would tell a lie, I would people would find out, because my memory is so bad, I can't remember. So if I'm asked to tell the lie a second time, I'll tell something completely different.
I just fall over myself.
Sorry?
I would just fall over myself. I cannot lie with anything.
No. So, and I think that's something that children recognize as well. I don't know if that's a built-in thing, but children will figure out if someone's lying, and it can take a long time, it can take a shorter time, but they'll eventually find out anyway. So yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything. The one thing that I might want to revisit at one point is evangelizing, and how you do it, and what comes into it. And I think that we should make that a separate talk, maybe.
Okay.
Something we can both prepare for. Not as much a personal talk as, but
just informative.
An informative talk. Yes.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
is there anything that you would like to touch on?
You know, it's probably something that I'll think of it as we get off of air. Once we're off air, I'll probably think of about 5 things. Gee, I wish I had told him this, or that. I'm wondering if your audience has any questions that are pertinent to what we've been discussing.
I have had no questions at all, and I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed, because we didn't have a lot of viewers either. That could be because Twitter is having glitches at my end every now and again, where I can't even see my own timeline. So it could be that people weren't even aware that we were talking at the moment. So no, there are no questions so far. There was one question that I deliberately skipped, and that was from our question. It was more kind of a remark, the fact that you didn't have a camera, and well, I can explain that quite easy, because if you would have a camera, I would have asked you to switch it off. Because I don't have a camera, and I like to be on an equal footing. So as long as I'm not showing my face, I'm not asking anyone else to show their face. That'll change.
I'm not yet ready to come out with who. At the same time, I'm not ready to come out with who I really am just yet. I mean, I've shared enough that the right people would be able to identify me. But if I was on camera, well, there's no point in hiding anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd rather for that not just yet.
No, and I respect that, because a lot of people I've talked to have kept their identity a secret and give me a screen name or whatever, and I'm fine with that, because I'm not in a position where I can judge whether or not it would be possible, and I can demand from people that they show their face. So even when I will be using a camera for myself, I won't or I won't have that mandatory that the people that I talk to have a camera as well. So to me that's not a problem. And if anyone has a problem with that, well, I think they need to switch to another channel.
It's a little bit risky for me because of where I am and the fact that at the moment I'm kind of being a bit of a whistleblower.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so yeah, well, and at least I think there's still a lot going on in your personal life that might call for you being anonymous for the moment.
For the moment, yes.
Yes. So I don't have a problem with it. I want to conclude this with what I've told you before. I think it's incredible courageous for you to have made the steps that you've made. When I look at your personal situation, it's even more so. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity for me to talk to you, and that you agreed to do this live, because it's quite a step.
Thank you for that, and thank you for having me on. And I hope that I haven't bored you or your audience to death.
You most certainly haven't, at least not me. And if I know anything about the people that listen to my talks, I think that's not the case with them either.
I would like to clarify one thing, though.
Okay, go ahead.
I know as negative as I've been speaking about fundamentalism here, I'm not, in case any of your eventual listeners are in those circles, I want to stress that I'm not speaking personally against them against their identity. Because I know all of this is so deeply entrenched in a person's identity, even if I express just a mere theological defense, I'm telling them they're wrong, and basically that they don't have the relationship with God that they think they do, or that they're not the good person that they want to be. Of course, they don't really believe in good people, but that's another theological discussion. What I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to put down your listeners on either side of the aisle. No. I've been there. I'm an atheist now, but I've been a Christian. I've been a couple different types of Baptists, though I haven't been the other denominations, but I've been a Christian. I've been a fundamentalist. I know how it feels. And I know how it feels when you're listening to some atheist on some radio show trash your beliefs. I know how it feels. And if I've caused too much pain, I apologize for the pain. I cannot apologize for the specifics of what I've said, or how I feel, or what I've been through. That's for other people to apologize for. But I'm not coming down on you as a person, to whoever may be listening to this and fearing that I might be.
Well, I don't think you have, and I've said this in a couple of my talks on YouTube. I don't judge people on what they believe, and I don't degrade people on what they believe. I think people should be judged on their actions, and people should be praised for their actions. So all the talks that I do on here, it's my intent to have an open discussion and not make it into a fight, who's right and who's wrong, or who's the better person. And I think that with everything you've talked about, it was never attacking a person. It's attacking things that people are taught, and that's in no way attacking the people that are believing it. What I would say, that if the people who are teaching it are offended, then I don't have a problem with that. Then they can contact me on Twitter and have a chat as well, because I would love to talk.
To me, it really depends on what level they're teaching it in, rather. I was teaching it, but I was also a victim of it. Many victims can become perpetrators. Many victims can become teachers and still be victims.
Yes. Well, what I was referring to is the people that have a higher function in any given church.
Ah, gotcha.
So not the people attending the church and just conveying what they are taught, because I think there's a difference.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. So, Charis, I would like to thank you again, because I think it's incredibly courageous for you to do this. And I feel honored to be the one that has had the opportunity to talk to you about this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, and thank you everybody for listening.
Okay, and we'll talk again, at least in private, and maybe we can, as I said, we can do a follow-up on how evangelism works, because I think that would, at least to me, it would be interesting, and I think there would be a couple of more people who would be interested in it on both sides. As well, the theists as the atheists. So I would love to do that sometime. Okay. So we'll end it here. I don't know what time it is at your place. I think it's in anywhere in the afternoon, I guess.
It's in the evening.
It's in the evening. Okay.
Early evening. Yes. So it must be incredibly late where you're at.
It's 1 a.m.
Yikes.
So for me, that's not so late, because I'm usually up until 3 a.m. sometimes even longer. So
same here, but different time zone.
That comes with being active in the music scene, where you sometimes have to go to performances at night and have to drive back at night. So I just basically changed my clock.
Ah, yes.
Okay, so thanks a lot, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.